The 1950s were rocket fuel for the imagination, conjuring 1,000 futures, some of them sadly already behind us. Welcome once again to a decade of classic science fiction that changed everything, where the short story, dominant for prior decades, gives a bit of ground to the longer form novel. What if time travel didn't just let us glimpse the future, but control it? What if there was an organisation outside of time itself, pulling strings to keep humanity safe? At the cost, though, of its potential. This is the mind-bending premise of Isaac Asimov's The End of Eternity, a time travel classic that dares to ask, when we erase risk, do we also erase the potential for greatness? In The End of Eternity, we encounter a realm outside of normal time, eternity. Here, time is catalogued and curated like a library. Trained specialists known as technicians step into history, adjusting tiny details to eliminate wars, plagues and other catastrophes. But every correction has a consequence, and one man, technician Andrew Harlan, is about to uncover just how dangerous perfection can be. Harlan is at the heart of it all. He's an elite time traveller with a cool demeanour and an unshakable faith in the mission of eternity. But when he falls in love with a woman from a century on the brink of being erased, he starts to question the system that he's helped to maintain. Is he preserving humanity, or is he imprisoning it? As Harlan digs deeper, he discovers a paradox at the heart of their work. The very future that eternity claims to protect may never come to pass. Their constant interference is preventing the rise of a spacefaring civilization, cutting humanity off from its destiny amongst the stars. Like many of Asimov's best works, The End of Eternity plays with the ethics of power. The Eternals mean well, they think they're helping, but in avoiding disaster, they're also eliminating risk, passion and progress. The future may be safe, but it's also small. It's a story about the unintended consequences of control, about how the pursuit of stability can smother innovation. It asks the ultimate Asimovian question: is the comfort of a planned future worth more than the chaos of potential? Harlan begins the novel as a true believer. He's sharp, logical and emotionally distant, but through his forbidden relationship he begins to crack. His transformation from rule-abiding technician to rebellious catalyst is what gives End of Eternity its emotional charge. He learns that love, spontaneity and even loss are part of what makes humanity truly human. In risking everything for his love, he challenges the very foundation of eternity, and in doing so, unlocks the future. By the end, we learn something staggering. Eternity itself is a roadblock. It's a self-made prison, trapping humanity in an endless loop of minor corrections. Harlan's final act isn't just personal, it's cosmic. He brings about the end of eternity, opening once more the timeline to possibility, to risk, and to chance. It's one of Asimov's boldest endings. It's quiet, it's cerebral and utterly transformative, and still eerily relevant. In an age of algorithmic planning, predictive models and safe choices, maybe End of Eternity serves as a reminder that perfection can be its own kind of prison. Imagine waking up each morning just a little bit smaller than the day before, not metaphorically, not emotionally, physically, little by little, millimetre by millimetre, you're fading from the world you once commanded, until even a spider is a life or death opponent. This is the chilling descent of Scott Carey and Richard Matheson's The Shrinking Man, a science fiction horror classic that asks a very 1950s question: what happens to a man when he can no longer be the man? When we first meet Scott Carey, he's vacationing with his wife, seemingly a regular middle-class man in mid-century America, but after a strange encounter with a radioactive cloud and a bit of insecticide, which, by the way, in a different book might have turned him into a superhero, Scott begins to shrink, literally. At first, it's easy to dismiss a little bit of weight loss, a slight drop in height, but the evidence keeps piling up. As his body begins to diminish, so does his place in the world. What starts as awkward jokes from teenagers and strange looks from neighbours spirals into something far more existential. Scott's shrinking triggers more than just physical danger. His marriage begins to fray. His wife's respect slips away as he becomes, quite literally, less of a man. Soon he's under attack from sparrows in his own garden and driven into his cellar, cut off from family and society alike. The basement becomes his new battleground, where a drip of water is precious and a black widow spider is a towering nightmare. Here the novel turns into a survival thriller. The cellar becomes a microcosm of an unforgiving world. Scott must reclaim his agency by scavenging for food, facing the spider and surviving one impossible leap after another. But of course, The Shrinking Man isn't just about a man fighting a spider, it's about a man fighting an identity crisis. This is 1950s America. Masculinity is tied to breadwinning, to physical superiority and dominance over the home. And as Scott loses height, he also loses authority. He can't go to work, he can't protect his family, and eventually he can't even speak to them. Even the pet cat toys with him. Matheson uses this shrinking as a metaphor for emasculation, for the fear of becoming irrelevant in a changing world. Scott fears becoming an object of ridicule or pity. He starts off a man clinging to a fragile version of masculinity, but as his size slips away, something else emerges, a sense of humility and adaptability. In the story's final moments, as he becomes smaller than an insect, he finally lets go of his fear. He realises that intelligence and existence don't depend on size or social roles. The universe is infinite, and so is the potential for consciousness, even at the subatomic level. It's not the end, but the beginning of something new. So The Shrinking Man is more than a pulp thriller then. It's a quietly devastating meditation on identity, on masculinity and on transformation. By the end, Scott Carey hasn't vanished, he's evolved. It's a rare science fiction novel that turns a shrinking man into an expanding idea. In the scorched deserts of a post-apocalyptic America, knowledge is sacred, buried in the ashen dust and kept alive by monks in robes, guarding relics of a long dead world. Written by Walter M. Miller Jr., a man haunted by his experiences in World War II, A Canticle for Leibowitz is both a meditation on human folly and a warning about the cyclical nature of history. After the flame deluge, a nuclear apocalypse, civilization collapses. A brutal backlash known as the Simplification sweeps the land. Mobs hunt down the learned, the literate, destroying books and tearing down the very idea of knowledge. But one man, Isaac Edward Leibowitz, an engineer turned monk, dares to resist. He founds an order dedicated to preserving what scraps of knowledge remain, copying them, memorizing them and hiding them in the desert sands of New Mexico. 600 years later, a young novice, Brother Francis, discovers relics in an old fallout shelter. There are blueprints, memos, doodles, trash to most, but holy relics to the monks. Were these the writings of the blessed Leibowitz himself? Centuries pass, and the Order of St. Leibowitz is still preserving the relics, but beyond the abbey, a new renaissance is blooming. The world is healing, knowledge is sought once again, and with it, ambition. Texarkana rises as a new power. Its head scholar seeks the monks' secret troves of ancient wisdom. When electricity returns to the abbey, it's seen as a miracle, but with light comes power, and power invites conflict. It's the 38th century now, and mankind has conquered the stars and rediscovered nuclear weapons. The Cold War returns, more deadly than ever. As nuclear tensions mount, the monks prepare to flee Earth on a secret ship, a final exodus, carrying the church and its knowledge to a new world. As humanity's lights go out, once again, nature, ever hungry, survives and waits. A Canticle for Leibowitz is a cycle then, a prayer and a warning, one that asks if we're doomed to repeat our mistakes, or are we capable of breaking the loop? In Arthur C. Clarke's The City and the Stars, humanity's future is isolated in a vast city diaspora where no one has ever ventured beyond its walls. A story of exploration, of knowledge and discovery. This 1956 novel asks, what happens when we break free from the boundaries that we set for ourselves? The City and the Stars is actually a revision of Clarke's first novel, Against the Fall of Night, which was initially published in 1948. After years of refinement, Clarke reimagined the story, giving it a larger scope and greater depth. The result is a tale of a far future Earth where humanity's last remnants live in a city shut off from the world outside. Diaspar is a technologically advanced city where everyone is born, lives and dies, and then is downloaded and reborn by machine. One man, however, Alvin, is different. He's a unique with no past lives, and he's determined to leave the city despite the ingrained fear of the outside world. Alvin discovers a hidden underground transport system that once connected Diaspar to other cities. His quest takes him outside Diaspar, where he finds Lys, a peaceful society that rejects the high-tech of Diaspar in favour of a simpler, agrarian lifestyle. But Lys also fears the unknown and refuses space travel or machines. As Alvin explores further, he uncovers the truth behind the mythical invaders. They were not conquering aliens after all, but something altogether more local. Alvin and his new friend Hilvar discover a being called Vanamond, a pure intellect created by the long-departed Galactic Empire. Vanamond's role is to battle the mad mind, an insane intelligence that once nearly destroyed the galaxy. Alvin's journey reunites the isolated societies of Diaspar and Lys and sets humanity on a new course of exploration. The City and the Stars is a timeless exploration of human potential, the dangers of isolation and the need to reach for the stars. In Clarke's vision, our future is not one of retreat, but one of expansion, of discovery, pushing the boundaries of what it means to be human. Before we look at some more books, tell me, what are your favourite 1950s science fiction tales? Do let me know in the comments down below. A man left for dead in the void of space, a universe of teleporting humans, of corporate empires and psychic bombs, and a revenge quest that turns into something cosmic. This is Alfred Bester's The Star's My Destination, a genre-defying proto-cyberpunk masterpiece that's part Count of Monte Cristo and part Blade Runner, and 100% unforgettable. In the UK, this book was first published in 1956 as Tiger Tiger, Alfred Bester's novel borrowed its name and its opening epigraph from William Blake's fierce and fiery poem, The Tiger. But this tiger wasn't burning bright in a forest, it was burning in space. The Stars My Destination wasn't like anything else in science fiction at the time. It's violent, it's poetic and wildly inventive, and it's now considered a precursor to cyberpunk and one of the great science fiction novels of the 20th century. So what's the setup? We're in the 24th or 25th century, depending on which edition you're reading. Humanity has colonised the solar system, and thanks to a discovery by one Charles Jaunt, we've developed personal teleportation, or jaunting. Jaunting's only good for maybe 1,000 miles and not through space, but it's still enough to completely flip the economy of the world, the culture, and even the nature of warfare. Inner planets versus outer planets, rich versus poor, and in the middle of it all, Gulliver Foyle, or Gully to his friends. Gully Foyle is a nobody, a mechanic, a drifter, and when we meet him, he's trapped alone on the wrecked spaceship Nomad. And when a passing vessel, the Volga, spots him and leaves him to die, something inside Foyle snaps. That moment ignites the entire novel. He survives, he escapes, and he becomes a man obsessed with revenge, a burning man, consumed by fury and constantly transforming. His face becomes tattooed with a tiger mask, and he escapes a prison. He learns, he evolves, he disguises himself. He returns later as a refined killer named Geoffrey Fourmile. It's Monte Cristo in space, but twisted through Bester's wild, high-octane imagination. This is not a traditional hero's journey. Foyle is violent, he's broken, he even commits terrible crimes, but his transformation from beast to man to something more is the beating heart of the story. It's about revenge, yes, but also redemption and self-discovery and the terrifying potential of untapped power. Bester was way ahead of his time. Before Neuromancer and before Blade Runner and before The Matrix, he was writing about mega corporations that rule everything, mind-enhancing implants, and people so rich they refuse to teleport just to show off. A reality-shifting, sensory-bending explosion of style and substance. And then there's a telepathically triggered explosive that could end the war or end the world, or maybe, just maybe, light the way to the stars. As Gully Foyle evolves, physically, mentally, even psychically, he becomes more than human, jaunting not just across planets, but across space and time. The Stars My Destination. It's not just a title, it's a challenge. It's punk, it's poetic, it's brutal, it's brilliant. This is The Stars My Destination, and it burns just as bright today as it did in the 1950s. If you've never read it, now's the time, and if you have, maybe it's time to take a jaunt back. What happens when science fiction collides with Catholic theology, with dogma? When a Jesuit priest confronts an alien species so morally perfect, it threatens to unravel the very foundation of his faith. A Case of Conscience, James Bish's 1958 novel, dares to ask a question few science fiction stories of the era were willing to consider. What if a race of aliens could live a virtuous, harmonious life without ever having heard of God? At the heart of this novel is Father Ramon Ruiz Sanchez, a Jesuit priest and a scientist sent to the planet Lithia in the year 2049. He's part of a four-man team tasked with evaluating the planet for potential human contact. Lithia is lush and strange, home to reptilian humanoids who live in apparent peace, harmony and reason. There's no crime, there's no war, there's no religion, there's no God. And for Ruiz Sanchez, this is not a miracle, it's a problem. Our priest is deeply troubled by what he finds. These aliens, the Lithians, have created what seems to be a utopia, but it's a utopia that exists entirely without a divine revelation. From a theological standpoint, that shouldn't be possible. According to the Catholic doctrine of the day, morality comes from God. So how can these beings live morally without any faith? His conclusion: the entire planet is a trap, a creation not of God, but of the adversary, of Satan. Lithia, he believes, was constructed as a subtle, insidious heresy to undermine belief by offering a perfect society that doesn't need God at all. But not everybody agrees. The physicist wants to exploit the planet's resources for nuclear materials, the chemist is fascinated and open-minded, and the geologist is indifferent. None of them see what Ruiz Sanchez sees. As they leave Lithia, Ruiz Sanchez receives a gift from his alien friend, a Lithian egg, a child to be raised on Earth. Back on Earth, that child, Egtverchi, grows up in a society still reeling from its own psychological scars. The planet is now a world of underground shelters, echoes of 20th century nuclear fears, and into this fragile ecosystem, Egtverchi becomes a disruptive force. Charismatic, alien, and entirely unlike anything that humanity has seen, he sparks unrest and potentially revolution. Meanwhile, our friend the Jesuit priest is called to Rome, and not for commendation but judgment. His belief that Satan could create an entire world is dangerously close to a heresy, placing evil on an equal footing with God. But in an audience with the Pope, a figure as rational and high-tech as he is spiritual, Ruiz Sanchez is offered a new perspective. Lithia may not have been created by Satan after all. It might be that he simply deceived them. And more importantly, the Pope thinks that there's something that priests could have done all along. He could simply have exorcised the planet, but he didn't. As chaos breaks out on Earth, partly due to Egtverchi's influence, Ruiz Sanchez, now spiritually adrift, ends up watching Lithia from afar via a new kind of telescope that bypasses the light speed delay to give a real-time view. He sees his friend the physicist now back on Lithia trying to set up a reactor, but something's wrong. Theoretical flaws in the physics hint at a catastrophic miscalculation, and in that moment Ruiz Sanchez does what he should have done years ago. He recites the rite of exorcism. The novel ends with a profound ambiguity. What is Lithia? Is it a test, a deception, a genuine miracle of reason in a godless world? James Blish leaves us without easy answers. It's a philosophical riddle, a theological meditation, and a crisis of faith on an interstellar scale. Mind control, paranoia, and slug-like aliens from Saturn. This is Robert A. Heinlein's The Puppet Masters, a 1951 novel where the Cold War goes cosmic. Set in a world recovering from a nuclear war, The Puppet Masters is one of Heinlein's most political and pulse-pounding stories, with secret agents, parasitic invaders, and a society teetering on the edge of total mental enslavement. It's a chilling tale of infiltration, resistance, and the terrifying power of the unseen. Published at the height of America's Second Red Scare, The Puppet Masters reflects the era's deepest anxieties: subversion, communism, and the fear that your neighbour might not be who you think they are. But Heinlein doesn't just mirror the fear, he embodies it. His parasitic invaders are literal body snatchers, slugs from Titan that attach to your back, hijack your nervous system, and erase your will. It's the year 2007, and the world is decades past a devastating nuclear war, but tensions persist. Cities like Washington, D.C. have been rebuilt, space stations orbit above, and colonies thrive on a hot, habitable Venus. But down on Earth, a secret agency known only as the Section has just received word of a flying saucer sighting in Iowa. The old man, head of the section, sends two of his best agents, Sam and Mary, to investigate. The agents find more than they bargained for, a town slowly falling under the power of mind-controlling aliens with entire neighbourhoods acting off. 6 agents have already vanished. The town is lost. They bring one of the creatures back to Washington for study, but it escapes and in a terrifying twist latches onto Sam himself. Under its control, Sam becomes a puppet, his body moving, his voice speaking, but the decisions no longer his own. The section eventually recaptures the parasite and exposes it in Congress. Chaos erupts, but it works. The public is finally convinced humanity is under attack. A law is passed requiring everyone to go shirtless in public to prove that they're not carrying a slug on their back. And that's just the beginning. The invasion spreads through television broadcast hubs, exploiting Heinlein's imagined 2007, where TV is still broadcast line of sight. When a slug controls a broadcast zone, it cuts off all communication to the outside world, creating isolated zones of total domination. Places like Kansas City and Des Moines fall quickly. Military efforts to reclaim them fail. The enemy adapts, learning to hide slugs in new body parts. The mind boggles. And so too must the humans. Nakedness becomes the new national defence policy. Clothes become suspicious. This is a Cold War terror turned all the way up to 11. Then, a turning point. At the crash site of an alien saucer, Mary recovers repressed memories. As a child on Venus, she was once possessed by a slug and survived thanks to a fever native to that planet. Suddenly, humanity has a weapon. Biological warfare. It's brutal, it's risky, but it might just work. Sam, our protagonist, is classic Heinlein. He's smart, he's adaptable and morally driven, but it's Mary who stands out. A red-headed, Venus-born operative with a traumatic past. She's one of Heinlein's most developed female characters. She's tough, vulnerable and unforgettable. The Puppet Masters is more than just a thrilling invasion story. It's a mirror of 1950s America where trust was fragile, enemies were invisible, and the body itself could be compromised. Because the fear of losing control, that never goes out of style. If you like what you saw here and you want to hear more about great science fiction books from the 1950s, then you should watch this next. As always, thanks for watching, and until next time, goodbye for now.